Something unbelievable just happened in British politics. In a move no one saw coming, Nigel Farage has shaken the country, and the world, by taking a bold step that may stop the UK from attending the G7 summit. And now, Keir Starmer is reportedly furious, shouting behind closed doors. But that's not all. Farage has just held an urgent meeting with King Charles, and insiders say the royal household is now caught in the middle of a political firestorm. What is going on? Why is Farage doing this? And how did it all explode in just 1 hour? The situation unfolded quickly. Early this morning, senior aides to Nigel Farage confirmed that he was filing an urgent challenge to Britain's attendance at the upcoming G7 summit. The move came just hours after Prime Minister Keir Starmer announced plans to attend the high-level international event as the new face of modern British leadership. Starmer had intended to use the summit to restore global trust in the UK's leadership post-Brexit, post-Tory era, but now, everything is falling apart. According to political sources, Farage's argument centers around a technical issue related to national sovereignty. In a powerful letter sent to both Parliament and the Royal Office, Farage claimed that Starmer's agenda at the G7 does not reflect the will of the British people, and warned of overreach that could violate the UK's internal constitutional balance. The move was unexpected, aggressive, and clearly aimed at disrupting Starmer's momentum. What followed was even more dramatic. Just minutes after the letter went public, Farage was spotted arriving at Buckingham Palace. Within an hour, he was reportedly granted a short but serious audience with King Charles III. While palace officials have declined to give full details, a senior royal insider has leaked that Farage presented grave national concerns and asked the king to consider royal review of Starmer's international actions. In plain words, Farage went directly to the monarch to interfere with a sitting prime minister's foreign policy. This is a highly unusual move, possibly unprecedented in modern British politics. Under normal conditions, the king remains neutral and symbolic in government matters. But Farage's action, intentionally or not, forces the monarchy into a public position that could damage royal neutrality. And for Starmer, the message was clear: Farage is not just opposing policy, he's targeting the Prime Minister's global reputation. Inside Downing Street, the reaction was fast and fiery. Starmer reportedly slammed his office door shut and demanded legal advice. Several top advisors were seen rushing through the halls, and Labour MPs were briefed on what is being described as a constitutional threat. One aide leaked to media that Starmer was absolutely livid and called the act an insult to both Parliament and the Crown. Rumours of an emergency cabinet meeting soon followed at the same time. The media went into full overdrive. Every major British news outlet picked up the story, and hashtags like #G7block, #Farage vs Starmer, and #Royal Crisis began trending on social media. Some praised Farage for standing firm on sovereignty. Others accused him of using royal tradition as a political weapon. Meanwhile, protesters began gathering outside both 10 Downing Street and Buckingham Palace, holding signs either in support of Farage or demanding he be stopped. What makes this even more complicated is the timing. The G7 summit is just days away. Starmer has prepared speeches, plans, and private meetings with world leaders. For the UK to back out now would look weak, unstable, or worse, divided. But if the palace speaks up, or if legal channels delay approval, Starmer may have no choice but to postpone or withdraw. That would be a huge embarrassment, not just for him, but for Britain's image abroad. Even more shocking is that Farage might not be acting alone. Some unnamed Conservative MPs are said to be quietly backing him. They believe Starmer is trying to rejoin the EU by the back door, using friendly talks with European leaders to slowly rebuild ties. Farage, seeing this, is pushing back hard, and he's using every tool available, even the Crown, to stop it. Right now, both Parliament and the Palace are silent. But silence speaks volumes. The next move could change British politics for years to come. The G7 summit is not just a fancy meeting between rich countries. It is one of the most important global events of the year, where world leaders from 7 of the most powerful democracies gather to decide how to handle major global issues. These include war, the economy, energy, climate change, and technology. The members include the United States, Canada, France, Germany, Italy, Japan, and the United Kingdom. It is a club of elite nations, and being part of it is not only about politics, it is about global trust and leadership. For Britain, the timing of this year's G7 summit is especially important. After years of political chaos, from Brexit to COVID-19 to changing prime ministers, the UK is under pressure to prove that it is still strong, reliable, and respected. Keir Starmer saw this summit as his big moment. As the newly elected Prime Minister, he planned to step on the world stage and present himself as the calm, competent leader who could rebuild Britain's international ties. His plan included high-level talks with President Biden, key EU figures, and even discussions about global security deals. In short, this was not just a photo opportunity, it was a strategy to restore the UK's global image. Many within Labour believed this moment would allow Starmer to undo the damage caused by years of instability and send a message to the world. Britain is back, but now, everything is uncertain. Nigel Farage's last-minute challenge could destroy all of that in a flash. If the UK's participation is delayed or blocked, it will raise big questions around the world. Is Britain divided? Is its leadership unstable? Can other countries even trust British agreements if domestic fights keep getting in the way? Other G7 countries are already watching closely. International media outlets like CNN, Deutsche Welle, and France 24 have picked up the news of Farage's actions. They are now speculating if Britain might miss the summit or arrive late, both of which would be seen as diplomatic disasters. And even if Starmer still attends, the story of his internal struggle will overshadow any message he tries to deliver. This is also dangerous for the UK economy. The G7 summit often includes talks about trade, energy partnerships, and financial planning. If the UK misses out or seems unreliable, it could affect investor confidence and global trade deals. Businesses want to deal with stable governments, not ones where opposition leaders can block international commitments. What's more, this could hurt Britain's relationship with the United States. President Biden has always shown strong support for a united Europe. Any move by Farage that looks anti-European or against unity might cause friction with the US. In fact, experts believe that if the UK pulls out of the G7 or causes problems, it could hurt future US-UK cooperation on military and technology deals. And then there's the deeper issue: what signal does this send to enemies and rivals? Global competitors like Russia and China are watching these events very closely. When they see division within a Western government, they see weakness. They use these moments to push their own agendas and spread propaganda. Farage's move, whether justified or not, could make Britain look like a house divided, arguing with itself instead of leading the world. Keir Starmer knew that the G7 was his chance to move beyond internal politics and show leadership. He wanted to build relationships, attract trade, and bring Britain back into serious global discussions. Now, that goal is hanging by a thread, and there's another problem brewing in the background: the monarchy. If King Charles is forced to respond publicly to Farage's claims, or even if he is seen as being involved in political decisions, it could damage not only the Prime Minister, but also the very structure of British government. For centuries, the monarch has remained politically neutral. But now, in one sudden move, that tradition is at risk. What started as a routine international summit has now become a test of the UK's democracy, diplomacy, and even monarchy. And the clock is ticking. The G7 is only days away. Can Starmer take control again, or has Farage already won the battle of perception? The walls of Downing Street were shaking, literally and politically, as news of Nigel Farage's G7 blocking challenge spread across the nation. Prime Minister Keir Starmer was already deep in crisis mode. According to inside sources, the mood inside Number 10 quickly turned from calm confidence to pure rage. Starmer, who had spent weeks preparing for the G7 summit as his first global stage moment, was blindsided by Farage's sudden interference. He was not just angry, he was said to be completely unhinged, according to one senior advisor. A confidential source who was in the building when the news broke revealed that Starmer's voice could be heard echoing through the corridors. In what is now being described as a meltdown, he reportedly slammed his briefing papers onto a table, shouted at senior aides, and demanded a full legal analysis of what Farage was attempting. Within minutes, emergency calls were made to constitutional experts, legal advisors, and international affairs staff. Everyone was told to drop what they were doing and prepare for political war. One advisor said Starmer believed this was not just an attack on his government, but on the authority of elected leadership itself. The Prime Minister reportedly called Farage's actions dangerous, undemocratic, and deeply manipulative. His primary fear? That the public would see Farage as a protector of national values, while Starmer would be painted as a globalist overstepping his powers. And for a prime minister still building his public image, perception is everything. Downing Street wasted no time trying to control the narrative. Within 2 hours of Farage's letter going public, Labour Party media teams began crafting responses, both legal and emotional. A draft statement was prepared calling the G7 summit vital to Britain's place in the world, and accusing political opponents of undermining Britain's future for personal gain. The final version, released to the press, was calmer, but still sharp. It stressed that the UK's role in the G7 was not optional, and reminded citizens that only elected officials, not activists or pundits, make international decisions. But even as the official statement went out, Starmer was pushing for more aggressive responses behind the scenes. He reportedly ordered private meetings with key ministers, including the Foreign Secretary and Chancellor, to prepare for possible retaliation against Farage's influence. There was even talk of launching an investigation into how Farage gained rapid access to Buckingham Palace, a move that could spark further royal controversy. Parliament was also beginning to boil. Several Labour MPs took to social media and press outlets to express outrage. Some accused Farage of abusing royal protocol and using the king as a political puppet. One MP tweeted, "Nigel Farage doesn't speak for Britain, he speaks for his own ambition." Another warned that pulling the monarch into a constitutional row is reckless and borderline traitorous. Meanwhile, Conservative MPs were noticeably quiet, at least in public. But rumors started to swirl that some on the Tory backbench secretly supported Farage's bold move. They see Starmer as too soft on Europe, too friendly with global elites, and too eager to rejoin EU-style systems. For them, blocking the G7 trip isn't just politics, it's a chance to stop Britain from returning to international entanglements. This silence from the Tory side only added to Starmer's panic. He feared a larger plot, an informal alliance between Farage and right-wing MPs to sabotage his international plans. Starmer, once seen as calm and composed, was now facing a crisis of power, perception, and purpose, and then came the worst blow of all. Buckingham Palace refused to comment. The Prime Minister had hoped the palace would quickly issue a neutral statement distancing itself from Farage's meeting. But when asked by reporters, royal officials declined to deny or confirm the conversation. Their silence was deafening and incredibly dangerous. It created the impression that Farage might actually have the king's ear, even if only briefly. For Starmer, that was not just unacceptable, it was terrifying. This crisis now has 3 parts: a prime minister desperate to control Britain's global image, a political opponent pulling levers once thought untouchable, and a royal institution caught in the middle, silently watching. Behind the scenes, Starmer's government is scrambling. Teams are reviewing legal options to block Farage's actions. Diplomats are calling G7 allies to reassure them the UK is still coming. Advisors are drafting speeches to defend the Prime Minister's right to lead. And security has been quietly increased around Downing Street, as protesters, both for and against Farage, gather in growing numbers. One insider summed it up best: this is not just about a summit. This is about who really runs Britain, the voters, the leaders, or the loudest man in the room. The next 48 hours may decide the answer. This is where the story takes a truly dramatic turn. The moment Nigel Farage entered Buckingham Palace, the political crisis stopped being just about Starmer, or the G7, or even Parliament. It became something far more explosive, an event that placed the British monarchy directly in the crosshairs of modern political warfare. In a country where the royal family has spent decades maintaining political neutrality, Farage's sudden and urgent meeting with King Charles could become one of the most controversial moments in recent royal history. It all started with a quiet but swift move. After delivering his letter to Parliament, Farage didn't hold a press conference or make a social media statement. Instead, he was seen entering a black car with tinted windows, which then made its way, unmarked, toward Buckingham Palace. News cameras caught only glimpses of the vehicle, but political insiders quickly confirmed his destination. Farage wasn't going to stir up the media. He was going straight to the top. Within an hour, reports began to leak. One royal aide, speaking off record, said that Farage requested an emergency audience with King Charles. While it remains unclear if the king officially accepted it as a formal audience or a private briefing, what is clear is this: Farage entered the palace, stayed for 32 minutes, and left without speaking to the press. But by then, the damage, or the shift, was already done. According to leaked notes from a senior royal source, Farage's main message to the king was simple but powerful: Britain is being dragged into international commitments without proper national debate, and the monarchy, as the symbolic protector of constitutional order, should at least be informed. Farage allegedly warned the king that Starmer was planning to use the G7 summit not just for diplomacy, but for realigning Britain with European-style politics. He argued that this move, if not checked, could shift the balance of UK sovereignty without the people's consent. And here's the dangerous part: Farage didn't directly ask the king to act. He didn't tell him to block Starmer. But by raising these concerns in a personal, urgent setting, Farage implicitly involved the crown in a political dispute, something almost no one in modern Britain has dared to do. The palace's response? Silence. Absolute silence. Official. Royal press officers have refused to confirm or deny the meeting. They have issued no comment on the content of Farage's claims. And King Charles himself, who usually avoids headlines involving party politics, has said nothing. This vacuum of information has triggered a media storm and fueled every kind of speculation. Some royal commentators say the king should immediately issue a clarification, denying any involvement. Others believe the silence is calculated, that Charles wants to keep the palace above the fight, even if it means letting people assume the worst. And there are those, especially in Farage space, who believe the meeting shows the king agrees with the concerns. The truth? No one outside the palace walls knows for sure, but the fallout has been immediate. Constitutional scholars are sounding the alarm. They say even the appearance of royal involvement in blocking a prime minister's international trip could be seen as a violation of democratic norms. One former High Court judge warned that if the monarch is perceived as choosing sides, by action or inaction, it could trigger calls for reform, or even Republican pressure. Meanwhile, inside the palace, staff are reported to be deeply divided. Some senior advisors are angry that Farage was let in at all. Others argue that refusing a former party leader with a significant public following could have caused an even bigger scandal. Either way, the image of the crown has taken a hit, and this is not happening in a vacuum. The royal family is already under pressure, from scandals, from protests, and from public fatigue. For King Charles, who has only recently taken the throne, getting dragged into a political mess this early in his reign could be disastrous. Critics say he should have seen the trap. Supporters say he was simply doing his duty, listening, not acting, but for Keir Starmer, this is a nightmare scenario. The idea that his main political opponent had a private audience with the king, while he himself is being challenged in court and parliament, undermines his entire position as prime minister. It sends a dangerous message, both at home and abroad. That the UK's leadership is fragile, split, and vulnerable to manipulation. Across social media, the public is furious and divided. Hashtags like #KingInCrisis, #Farage at the Palace, and #Royal Neutrality Now are trending nationwide. Some users are calling for the monarchy to stay out of politics entirely. Others are demanding that the king take a stand and defend British values from Starmer's alleged overreach. Protests are being organized outside the palace gates, with signs reading, "No crown in politics," and "The king is not a politician." In just 24 hours, a political disagreement over a summit has turned into a national identity crisis. And now, the question no one wants to ask is starting to be whispered: if the monarchy loses its neutrality, what does it stand for anymore? As the dust continues to swirl around Buckingham Palace, Starmer and Farage are both locked in a new kind of war, one where perception matters more than policy, and a quiet royal meeting may change the course of UK democracy.